Dominic Vale was a respected architect. Celeste Vale was his elegant and loyal wife, and Marina Wren, Celeste's younger sister, was the secret that shattered their perfect world. What began as stolen glances and late-night texts led to a hidden affair, a pregnancy, and a family scandal so twisted it would leave an entire town speechless. Beneath the polished surface of love and loyalty lay betrayal, lies, and a baby born from the ultimate act of deceit. Celeste Warrington had always believed she was living a dream. Her life in Greenhollow, a quaint town nestled between rolling hills and lined with rows of white picket fences, seemed picture-perfect. She owned a small flower shop on Maple Lane, known for its soft arrangements and signature lavender scent that spilled into the streets. Her husband, Dominic Price, was a respected real estate developer who charmed clients with his clean-cut looks and deep voice. Together, they appeared like a couple plucked straight from a magazine. Graceful, successful, admired. Celeste often received compliments from customers and neighbors who said they were the couple everyone wanted to be. Dominic was known around town for his generosity. He sponsored local fundraisers, paid for school renovations, and even volunteered to coach a youth soccer team. He moved through town with ease, shaking hands, giving nods, always knowing the right thing to say. To many, Dominic was flawless, but perfection, especially when carefully crafted, can be dangerous. Every few months, Celeste's younger sister, Marina Warrington, would come to visit from the city. Marina was everything Celeste wasn't: adventurous, bold, spontaneous. While Celeste cherished order and routine, Marina drifted like wind, working odd jobs from teaching yoga to designing quirky t-shirts. Celeste loved her sister fiercely, despite their differences. Whenever Marina arrived, usually unannounced, Celeste would drop everything to welcome her, share meals, and catch up like old times. It reminded her of simpler days when they were kids, playing in the backyard under their mother's watchful eye. Marina, with her wild curls and unpredictable moods, quickly grew popular in Greenhollow. She'd strike up conversations with strangers, dance barefoot in the living room, and laugh louder than anyone at dinner. At first, Dominic seemed amused. He'd joke about her carelessness, raise his eyebrows when she interrupted dinner with one of her wild stories, or chuckle when she spilled wine on his paperwork. Celeste thought nothing of it. In her mind, they were family, and Dominic had always been polite, even patient, with her unpredictable sister. But over time, subtle changes crept in. Marina began extending her visits. What started as long weekends turned into entire weeks. Celeste didn't complain. She liked having her sister around. Marina helped with the flower shop, cooked elaborate meals, and even offered to redecorate the spare bedroom. Celeste assumed it was a phase. Maybe Marina needed a break from city life. Maybe she was lonely. Dominic, meanwhile, seemed increasingly involved in Marina's presence. He'd offer to drive her into town, linger a bit longer at the dinner table when she was talking, and even started picking up her favorite snacks during his grocery runs. Celeste noticed, but brushed it off. Dominic had always been thoughtful. She reminded herself not to overthink things. As the weeks rolled on, Dominic began working late hours. He claimed a new development deal required extra attention. He'd come home past midnight, sometimes with the scent of cologne stronger than usual. Celeste noticed small things: a missed dinner, a vague excuse, a hurried shower before bed. But she silenced her suspicions. After all, she trusted him. And Marina, despite her flaws, was her sister. Then came the day Marina left abruptly. No explanation, no heartfelt goodbye, just a scribbled note left on the kitchen counter saying she had to go back to the city and that she'd be in touch. Celeste was puzzled. She called, texted, even sent emails. Days turned into weeks, and Marina didn't respond. Dominic shrugged it off, saying maybe Marina was just overwhelmed or found a new job opportunity. Celeste wanted to believe that. She had no reason to think otherwise. But something inside her shifted. The silence felt heavy. Dominic's mood darkened. He became irritable, distant, and often avoided eye contact. He stopped asking about Marina altogether. The warmth he once carried was replaced by cold politeness. Even his kisses, once soft and familiar, felt rushed, like a formality. Celeste began to reflect on past moments with sharper clarity. The nights Marina stayed up late on the back porch, while Dominic wandered out to check on the grill. The giggles she heard behind closed doors. The lingering glances she once thought were harmless. Patterns began to form in her mind like puzzle pieces fitting into place. She felt sick. Still, she pushed the thoughts away. Doubt is a seed that, when watered, grows into suspicion, and Celeste feared what that suspicion could lead to. She convinced herself she was being paranoid, that she was letting imagination take over logic. She reminded herself of the life she had, the business she built, the man she married. Love, she believed, should come with trust, even if it trembles. But deep down, something inside her began to shift. She stopped sleeping through the night. Her appetite faded. She'd catch herself staring out the window for long stretches, remembering Marina's last visit, trying to recall anything she missed. The way Dominic smiled at her sister, how Marina brushed his arm when she passed him a drink. Little moments, once dismissed, now burned in her memory. Celeste was unraveling. She didn't speak of her worries to anyone. Not her friends, not her employees, not even her mother. She carried the weight alone, hoping it would pass, that Marina would call and clear the air, that Dominic would go back to normal. But as time dragged on, silence remained the only answer. And sometimes, silence says more than words ever could. By the end of the third month, Celeste found herself going through Dominic's pockets when he left for work. She checked his phone while he showered, searched through drawers, stared too long at old photos, wondering when the love turned into lies. The dream she once lived had cracks now, and through those cracks, the truth was starting to seep in. In the weeks that followed Marina's sudden disappearance, the atmosphere inside the Warrington Price home changed in subtle but undeniable ways. The cheerful energy that once filled the house had been replaced with an unsettling quiet. Celeste tried to maintain normalcy, opening her flower shop each morning, attending to her loyal customers, and pretending that her life hadn't been touched by suspicion. But the silence between her and Dominic was growing louder by the day. Dominic claimed he was busy with a new housing development outside town. He left early, came home late, and barely spoke during meals. Celeste watched him closely now, noticing things she had once overlooked. His phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket. He took calls outside, his voice hushed, always keeping an eye on the windows. His routines were calculated, his expressions guarded. Meanwhile, Marina remained unreachable. Every text Celeste sent sat on delivered, but never read. Calls went straight to voicemail. Emails bounced back. Celeste tried contacting mutual friends, even Marina's old yoga studio, but no one had seen or heard from her. It was as though Marina had vanished, leaving behind a swirling mystery that only Dominic seemed indifferent to. Celeste's instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. She found herself thinking about Marina constantly, her laughter, her sudden mood shifts, and most of all, the way she had looked during her last visit. Celeste remembered catching Marina staring at Dominic more than once, her eyes filled with something that resembled longing. At the time, it seemed innocent. Now, in hindsight, it felt deliberate. On a cold Monday morning, Celeste received an anonymous envelope at her flower shop. Inside was a single photograph. Marina, sitting in what looked like a small apartment, her belly unmistakably swollen. She was visibly pregnant. There was no message, no signature, just the image. Celeste's hands trembled as she stared at the photo. Her mind raced. Questions flooded her thoughts like a storm. Was it real? Who sent it? Why now? The photograph was dated only 2 weeks earlier. Celeste left work early that day, her heart pounding, her thoughts scattered. She didn't confront Dominic immediately. Instead, She spent the evening locked in her craft room, flipping through old journals, receipts, anything that could connect Dominic to Marina in a way she hadn't noticed before. And the signs were there, hidden in plain sight. A receipt from a hotel 2 towns over on a date Dominic claimed to be working late. An unexplained cash withdrawal from their joint account that matched the same time Marina had extended her stay. A bottle of prenatal vitamins tucked behind a row of allergy pills in the bathroom, something she had never bought. The walls were closing in and Celeste could feel it. Still, she needed confirmation. That night, while Dominic slept, she searched through his locked desk drawer. Tucked beneath files and property contracts was a folded letter with Marina's handwriting. It was dated from 3 months earlier. In it, Marina wrote about feeling lost, overwhelmed, and unsure if she should keep the baby. She referenced late-night conversations with Dominic and how he had promised to take care of everything. Celeste's hands shook as she read. The truth was undeniable now. Her husband had not only betrayed her trust, but he had created life with her own sister. She felt physically ill, her breath shallow, her mind spinning. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown collapse of everything she thought was real. Her marriage, her family, her sense of security. It had all been a carefully crafted illusion, but the unraveling was far from over. 2 days later, Celeste received another anonymous envelope, this one containing a copy of a lease agreement. It listed Marina as the tenant and Dominic Price as the financial guarantor. The address was in a neighboring city, only an hour's drive away. The pieces were falling into place. Dominic hadn't just had an affair. He had been supporting Marina financially, hiding her away while keeping up the facade of a normal marriage. Celeste made the drive to the listed address, a rundown apartment building on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. She didn't go inside. She just stood across the street, watching the building. Eventually, through the dim light of a second-story window, she saw Marina. Her figure had changed. She was heavily pregnant now, her face fuller, her movements slower. Celeste watched as Marina sat alone, rubbing her belly, unaware that her sister was only a few yards away. It was all real. Celeste didn't confront her, not yet. She drove home in silence, her knuckles white against the steering wheel, her heart hollow. She knew now what Dominic had been hiding. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had built a secret life, a child, an apartment, a future without her. And the worst part was that he had done it with Marina, the one person Celeste had loved unconditionally. Back at home, Dominic was already in bed, pretending to sleep. Celeste stared at him from the doorway, numb. She felt like she was staring at a stranger. Every memory, every kiss, every promise they had made now felt like a lie. The man she had trusted with her life had destroyed it behind her back, but Celeste wasn't ready to confront him yet. Not until she had all the pieces. She needed more than anger. She needed a plan. Because betrayal like this didn't deserve silence. It deserved exposure, and she intended to give it exactly that. The days following Celeste's silent discovery moved with aching slowness. Each morning, she played the role of a woman still in control, fixing her hair, arranging blooms in the shop window, smiling for customers who knew nothing about the chaos she carried within. But behind that carefully composed facade, her mind worked tirelessly. She had chosen not to confront Dominic yet, not out of fear, but because she wanted the truth in full, with no room left for denial or excuses. If she was going to break the silence, she wanted it to be irreversible. Celeste started visiting the apartment building in the neighboring city during the evenings, watching Marina from a safe distance. She learned her sister's schedule, when she left for brief walks, when groceries were delivered, when the lights turned off. She kept track like a detective, compiling facts instead of assumptions. It was during one of those stakeouts that she saw him, Dominic. He appeared one evening around dusk, parking 2 blocks away and approaching Marina's building with a paper bag in hand. Celeste watched through the narrow scope of her binoculars as he entered the apartment without knocking. He had a key. He stayed for over an hour. When he finally left, Marina followed him to the door, her hands resting on her rounded stomach. Their embrace was long and familiar, and Dominic kissed her forehead before walking away. It wasn't just lust. There was a tenderness in his actions, a bond that had clearly grown far deeper than a one-night mistake. Celeste sat frozen in her car, her heart pounding as she watched the man she married show more affection to her sister than he had shown her in months. The betrayal deepened with every observation. And yet, there was still one mystery that gnawed at her: the anonymous envelopes. Someone knew about the affair and wanted Celeste to uncover the truth, but they hadn't revealed themselves. She started retracing her steps, wondering if a friend or neighbor had seen something. She quietly asked around at the flower shop, pretending to joke about Marina's sudden disappearance, hoping someone would offer a clue. Most people simply shrugged, saying Marina was always a bit unpredictable. But one customer, an older woman named Mrs. Ellery, paused longer than expected. Later that week, Mrs. Ellery returned with a pie and a soft apology. She admitted that she had seen Dominic and Marina together several times in the months before Marina disappeared. Once at a roadside diner, another time leaving the hospital together. She hadn't said anything because she wasn't sure what it meant. But now, hearing the worry in Celeste's voice, she felt compelled to speak. She also admitted she had once followed them to an apartment complex, concerned something wasn't right. Celeste didn't press further, but now she was certain. Mrs. Ellery was the source of the envelopes. Someone had been watching all along. The confirmation only fueled Celeste's next steps. She began documenting everything: photos, receipts, dates, witness accounts. She created a folder, labeled it Truth, and stored it inside a fireproof box in her closet. The more she uncovered, the more deliberate it all seemed. Dominic hadn't just fallen into temptation. He had orchestrated a double life. He had protected Marina, funded her escape, and carefully controlled what Celeste could and couldn't know. The realization didn't make her sad anymore. It made her dangerous. Then came the hospital visit. Celeste received a call from a nurse at St. Alda's Medical Center. The woman introduced herself as Tessa and claimed she had once treated Marina during her first trimester. She had stumbled upon Celeste's contact information while clearing old files and felt compelled to speak. Tessa confirmed that Dominic had accompanied Marina to most of her appointments and even signed certain documents as her emergency contact. He had been present during ultrasounds and had asked the hospital to maintain privacy due to family tensions. Tessa had no idea Dominic was married to someone else at the time. Celeste thanked her, but hung up trembling. Dominic had involved himself in every part of Marina's pregnancy. He wasn't just the biological father. He was actively planning for the baby's future, and yet he came home each night and barely acknowledged Celeste's presence. She felt like a ghost living in her own life, floating around a man who had already moved on emotionally. But fate wasn't done revealing secrets. Later that week, Celeste returned to the apartment building again, determined to confront Marina in person. She knocked on the door, her hands clammy, her thoughts swirling. But no one answered. Concerned, she spoke to the building's janitor, who told her that Marina had been rushed to the hospital 3 nights ago with severe abdominal pain. She had gone into early labor. Celeste drove straight to the hospital, her emotions on a tightrope. There, through a hallway window, she saw Dominic in the maternity ward, holding a newborn wrapped in pale blue. His eyes were red, not from joy, but exhaustion and tension. Standing beside him was Marina, pale but awake. She looked frail, nothing like the confident woman Celeste had last seen in photos. Yet there they were, together, a family. Celeste turned away before they could see her. She walked back to her car in a daze, the full weight of her reality crashing down on her shoulders. Dominic was now a father. Marina, her younger sister who had once clung to her for advice and support, had taken everything from her: her husband, her future, her trust. And now there was a child, a living, breathing symbol of the betrayal. But Celeste wasn't done. If anything, this was only the beginning. The story the world knew was that she was just a florist, a wife, a quiet presence in the background. But that image had shattered. Her pain had turned into clarity, her heartbreak into a mission. They had made choices in the shadows. Now, she would bring everything into the light. Celeste's days became colder, despite the summer heat settling over Holden Grove. Every movement she made felt mechanical. Opening the flower shop, arranging petals, smiling at regulars, pretending life had returned to normal. But inside her, something had changed. She no longer felt sadness or shock. Those emotions had run dry. In their place stood a hard, still resolve. She had seen enough, learned enough, and waited long enough. The birth of the baby had sealed everything. There was no going back. She had not told a single soul what she had discovered. Not her closest friend Dahlia, not her mother, not even the priest she once confided in. This betrayal was too massive, too personal. It wasn't just about love, it was about identity. Everything she thought she knew, about marriage, about family, about loyalty, had been flipped upside down. Marina had given birth to her husband's son, and the two of them were raising that child in secret while pretending Celeste didn't exist. It was unforgivable. She continued documenting everything with a precision that surprised even herself. Marina's hospital records, Dominic's visits, bank statements that now showed regular withdrawals unaccounted for. She noticed a pattern. Dominic had begun paying for Marina's rent months before her sudden disappearance. The address was under a false name, but the bank records didn't lie. He had used a secondary account that Celeste only learned of through a tax document accidentally mailed to the house. It wasn't just betrayal, it was calculated deception. One evening, Celeste returned home to find Dominic already in the kitchen, casually preparing dinner. He asked about her day, smiling, as if he hadn't been holding another woman and their newborn just days before. She stared at him across the counter and nodded, saying everything was fine. He talked about work, about renovations they should consider for the backyard, but all she could hear in her mind was Marina's voice, her laugh, her betrayal. Celeste's hands trembled under the counter, but she kept them hidden. She didn't ask questions anymore. She didn't argue. She let him feel secure. That was the most dangerous thing she could do, make him believe she knew nothing. What Dominic didn't realize was that Celeste had already hired a private investigator. His name was Vaughn Mercer, a former detective with a knack for finding hidden truths. Celeste met with him quietly at a bookstore cafe 3 towns away. She handed him every piece of evidence she had collected, and Vaughn took it from there. Within a week, he uncovered even more: text message logs from burner phones, credit card charges at maternity boutiques, even photographs of Dominic attending prenatal classes. He wasn't just helping Marina survive, he was preparing to build a future with her. Vaughn also found something else. Marina had recently filed paperwork for parental custody. She wasn't listing the father's name, but she had checked a box stating that he was involved and contributing. Celeste now realized the two of them were planning something permanent. Maybe Marina wanted to return and claim some of Dominic's assets. Maybe they wanted to leave Holden Grove altogether and start over in a new city. Either way, Celeste knew she wasn't part of the plan, but they had underestimated her. While Dominic lived in the illusion of a double life, Celeste began working on her own revenge. It started with the flower shop. She placed hidden cameras inside and documented all her daily interactions. Then she moved to the house, installing discreet microphones in the living room and garage. She never knew when Dominic might slip up, and she wanted every word, every lie, every twist of the truth on record. The recordings began to reveal more than she had expected. Phone calls made when he thought she was asleep, messages whispered to someone on the other end, always ending with soon or just trust me. It was enough to give her what she needed. But the final piece came from the hospital again. Another nurse, one who had seen Celeste's face during her visit, reached out anonymously. She had overheard a conversation between Dominic and Marina during a late-night visit. Apparently, Marina had grown anxious. She had begun to regret everything. The secrecy, the shame, the danger of being found out. She had even mentioned wanting to tell Celeste the truth before the baby arrived. But Dominic had refused. He had insisted on silence, even warning her that revealing anything could ruin everything. That conversation was recorded by hospital security, tucked away in an archive. The nurse offered Celeste access through an encrypted drive. Celeste now had everything she needed. 1 month later, she invited her closest friends and family for what she described as a quiet anniversary dinner at the house. Dominic was thrilled by the idea. He believed their marriage was healing, that Celeste had forgiven the past distance. He even bought her a bracelet, engraved with the word, forever. Celeste smiled as he fastened it around her wrist. When the guests arrived, she greeted them with charm and grace. They laughed, ate, and toasted to years of love. Then, when the room quieted, she stood in front of them all with a flash drive in her hand. Without warning, she plugged it into the TV and hit play. First came the recordings, Dominic's secret, calls, the late-night whispers. Then came the photos, the hospital visits, the footage of him kissing Marina's forehead as she held their child. Gasps echoed through the room. Faces turned pale. Her mother covered her mouth in horror. Dominic froze in his seat, unable to look away. Marina's name was repeated in disbelief by those who knew her, loved her. When the final clip ended, Celeste looked around the room. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply walked to the door, opened it, and told everyone to leave. She turned to Dominic last, and without raising her voice, she said nothing at all. The silence was louder than anything she could have said. The house was empty within minutes. That night, Dominic slept alone in the guest room. Celeste locked the door to their bedroom from the inside. The truth was out now, and the fallout was just beginning. Dominic awoke the next morning to an empty house. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. The air inside felt heavy, thick with the weight of everything that had been exposed the night before. His phone buzzed endlessly with mist. Calls, unread messages, and emails from friends, family, and co-workers. The video Celeste played at the dinner had gone beyond that single room. Someone had recorded it on their phone. Now it was circulating among the tight-knit community of Holden Grove, spreading like wildfire through whispers and forwarded messages. The fallout was swift and brutal. Dominic's colleagues at the firm had already begun to distance themselves. Clients started pulling their accounts, and the senior partners called an emergency meeting he wasn't invited to. His spotless reputation, carefully built over a decade, had crumbled in less than 24 hours. But what unsettled him most wasn't the judgment of others. It was Celeste's silence. She hadn't spoken to him since the dinner. She hadn't left the bedroom. She hadn't even made coffee, which she never skipped, no matter what. Dominic tried knocking on the door that evening. There was no response. The door remained locked. He sat on the hallway floor for hours, staring at the grain of the wood, trying to think of something to say that could make it all disappear. But there were no words left. He had destroyed something sacred, and he knew it. Celeste, meanwhile, wasn't hiding. She was planning. Vaughan Mercer had advised her to stay composed and careful. There was still more to be done. Dominic had not only betrayed her, he had used her money, her name, and her trust to build a second life. That wasn't just deception, it was a form of theft. And now, with public opinion shifting, she had leverage. She contacted a lawyer, one who specialized in high-stakes divorces involving infidelity and financial fraud. She shared everything: the bank records, the hidden payments, the fake lease, agreements, even the child support payments disguised as business expenses. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Esme Caldwell, wasted no time. She drafted a petition that would freeze Dominic's accounts and secure the flower shop in Celeste's name, ensuring he couldn't siphon funds while the divorce proceedings played out. When Dominic was finally served the papers, it happened at his office. Esme made sure of that. The humiliation was complete. His co-workers watched in silence as the court official handed him the envelope. The word petition stamped boldly on the front. He didn't even open it until he got home. And when he did, his hands shook with the realization that Celeste wasn't going to forgive him. She was going to bury him. At the same time, Marina was falling apart. The video had reached her too. She saw herself on that screen, her baby cradled in her arms, her secret life now public knowledge. She hadn't left the apartment in days. Her phone had stopped ringing, and the few friends she had left had gone silent. Even her landlord, a kind older woman who used to check in regularly, began avoiding eye contact when passing by. Shame had wrapped itself around Marina like a second skin. She tried calling Dominic, but he didn't answer. The messages she left grew more desperate each time, asking for reassurance, for a plan, for anything. But there was no reply. Dominic had lost control, and he wasn't going to waste energy saving her. He was focused on damage control for himself. Celeste, however, hadn't forgotten Marina. She waited until the custody hearing was scheduled, then made her move. With her lawyer's help, she filed a motion to investigate the child's paternity officially. It was a bold move, but one backed by evidence, medical documents, timelines, even Dominic's own recorded admissions. The court approved a DNA test, and Marina was served at her apartment. The results came back exactly as expected. Dominic was the father. That opened the door for Celeste's final strike. She pushed for Dominic to be declared financially responsible for the child through a formal legal judgment, one that included backdated expenses. She demanded he continue to pay until the child turned 18, effectively tying him to his mistake for the next 2 decades. It wasn't revenge, it was justice, and it was delivered with precision. Marina, now a single mother with a ruined reputation, began planning her departure from Holden Grove. There was nothing left for her here. She packed her things slowly, box by box, not knowing where she would end up. Her dreams of a quiet life with Dominic had disintegrated under the weight of their shared betrayal. She had thought love would protect her, but love had turned to rot the moment secrets had been planted. Dominic finally moved out of the house a week later. Celeste had given him a deadline, and he met it without protest. He packed his belongings into boxes and loaded them into a rented truck. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't ask for a second chance. He knew better now. Celeste watched from the window, her expression unreadable as he drove away. In the months that followed, she slowly began rebuilding her life. The flower shop flourished under her care, and she renovated the house to erase the shadows of what had once been. She removed the guest room completely, converting it into a study. She painted over the old photos, donated the furniture, and started writing again. Journals full of reflection, grief, and growth. The town, once buzzing with whispers, moved on to the next scandal. But Celeste remained a quiet pillar of strength, admired for her grace and composure during the storm. She had not crumbled. She had not lashed out. She had simply survived, and in surviving, she had taken back her power. Dominic and Marina became footnotes in her story, not main characters. The affair, the betrayal, the child, they no longer defined her. She walked forward alone, but not lonely. She had chosen peace over vengeance, and that was the most powerful ending of all.